This is Jim Sawyer for capitalismincrisis.org. Laissez-faire capitalism dominates the right, even as Marxist socialism dominates the left. Nothing much exists in between. Ideologues claim there are two choices, that is, two choices only. No pragmatic purple, just red or blue. Where along this bifurcated red-blue continuum, then, does one place Donald Trump? Doctrinally, Trump is red, but early on didn't he endorse higher tax rates on so-called carried interest, rankling private equity maven Mitt Romney and hedge fund billionaires? Well, yes. Does that make him economically blue? Well, no. Actually, Donald Trump is a flip-flopper, first red, then blue, then back to an even brighter shade of red. With Trump, there is no pragmatic purple. Trump's August selection of economic advisors confirms his commitment to blindingly red Republican orthodoxy. You know, more egregious tax cuts for the rich and less regulation for go-go financiers. One wonders why lesser-educated working folks are headed enthusiastically in Trump's very red direction, that is, headed toward voting against their self-interest. That's a rhetorical question, of course. In this election, political anger for many swamps economic rationality. One wonders also why America has come to be stuck with only two choices. Neither red nor blue in isolation seem particularly helpful or hopeful at getting at our country's situation and getting it out of its contemporary economic quagmire. If across the aisle consensus building is the wave of our economic future, as I claim, then why is there not a doctrinal alternative mixing economic red with economic blue, birthing a pragmatic purple? The foundation of our scrawny two-choice system dates not only to Adam Smith and the American Constitution, but to a degree also to Karl Marx. Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations in 1776, and then almost a century later, Karl Marx published Das Kapital. The die was cast, it seems, red or blue, blue or red, one or the other. But that was 2 centuries ago. Don't doctrinaire economists take account of changing times and then adjust to changing circumstances with pragmatic purple policies? Well, actually, no. But why? Well, Canada, for instance, uses a parliamentary system different from ours that fosters coalition building across their equivalent of red and blue. Since we lack a parliamentary government because, in part, we vote directly for our president, America's challenge is to create pragmatic purple by inventing purple economic doctrine. On the crimson right, advocates of laissez-faire seem oriented entirely toward idealized economic worlds they believe equilibrate instantly, with no need for government ever to regulate, subsidize, tax, or prop up demand during crises. On the royal blue left, advocates of socialism, Bernie Sanders included, prefer a more proactive government role for planning and execution than the contemporary American majority embraces. Whatever. If we are to cut through our bifurcated system to create pragmatic purple, where might we start? Well, we could start by setting positive and negative incentives connected to specific outcomes Americans wish to gain or avoid. Capital, the means to gaining outcomes, is not absolute but relative then, for its special status becomes evident only according to how the asset is used. For instance, a plow horse in the field is capital, but the same animal assigned as a hobby horse is merely a non-productively used asset instead. Likewise, finance may be useful to gaining prudent economic outcomes, but alone it becomes hobby horse-oriented, that is, non-productive or even counterproductive. The future of American capitalism, I argue, is the future of consensus decision-making about what is productive capital and what is not in public spaces across our great land. Consensus decision-making really begins with crafting of a stewardship vision of the world we seek for our children and our children's children. In a nutshell, then, generational stewardship is what Pragmatic Purple is about. Please check out Capitalism in Crisis on the web. From Boulder, Colorado, this is Jim Sawyer for capitalismincrisis.org.